Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
6:07 on this Monday, Memorial Day, in your nation's capital, and we could not be prouder than to be here live for you. Every minute of the morning, it's O'Connor and Company, and a happy Memorial Day, and a solemn Memorial Day to all Americans, grateful as we are for that sacrifice that has been made on our behalf, on the behalf of our freedoms and our liberties. We'll be doing our best to honor the fallen throughout the morning. At 6:35, Gabriella Hoffman on how Biden's National Park Service doesn't want the American flag flown at a national park. 7:05, Joe DeGeneva on how Biden's Justice Department is trying to infringe on the civil rights of a former president. 7:35, Marian Watkins, Chief of Staff of the Honor Flight Network. 8:05, presidential historian Jane Hampton Cook. And at 8:35, Alex Kershaw, spokesperson for the National World War II Memorial. 20th anniversary right now. I'm Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
We spent a little time in the 5 o'clock hour recounting our Memorial Day weekend up to this point, and I discussed the fact that I was honored again to be able to attend the graduation ceremonies and commissioning ceremonies at the United States Naval Academy, as this year one of the one of the young men that we sponsor graduated with the class of 2024, and it was a great moment. One thing that made the moment even better was the fact that we didn't hear from the Commander-in-Chief. The Commander-in-Chief was up at West Point again. I'd love to know what happened with the decision-making process here. Based on the rotation, they all rotate. The President, the Vice President, the Secretary of Defense. I think maybe the fourth year, I think those three rotate. Maybe once in a while, either the Secretary of the Army, the Secretary of Navy gives the address. So the Secretary of Navy was there. This year, like last year, it was Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense. The Defense Secretary spoke at last year's graduation and then came back and spoke at this year's graduation, which is weird. And I'm just curious as to what went into that decision. The President ended up going to the Military Academy at West Point. Last year, of course, you'll remember he was at the Air Force Academy, and he fell down on the stage. You remember that?
Right. That was awkward.
Blamed it on a sandbag. Yeah. Oh. They said that there was a sandbag that he didn't see there, and that's what they blamed. They're always blaming someone else.
Yes.
They can't possibly just step in front of the camera and say, "Well, what do you want? He's 80 years old. He falls down." And now they got him shoes that look like a pontoon boat. He's still falling weird. I remember 4 years ago, Trump spoke at West Point during the election year, and they made a big deal of the fact that he was sort of cautiously going down the ramp because it had just rained.
Yes. Yes.
And Biden mocked him because he couldn't. Look at me. I'm running up and down ramps. I'm fine moving around. You should have seen him on that same ramp up at West Point. He looked like he was experiencing a 7.3 earthquake as he was walking. And videos of
that won't go viral because the media will suppress it as
no,
best as they can. Yeah.
So during his speech, and again, I want to remind everybody, this is West Point. That is the military academy for the United States Army. If there's one thing you know about West Point, they're great men and women. They're going to be great officers. They're getting their commission. It's a big deal. And they spend 4 years hating Navy and hating the Naval Academy. That's just the way it is. And yes, they're partners, and yes, they're going to join the military together, and they work hand in hand, and they're brothers in arms, and they'll take a bullet for each other. But the 1,100 who go to that school hate the 1,100 that go to Annapolis. That's just the way it's always been.
And they don't want to hear about them on that.
And the last thing they want is Joe Biden going up there saying, "Well, let me tell you a story about Annapolis." It's like, shut up. And by the way, then the story and by the way, I want to hand it, Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense, who is a graduate of West Point, pretty much kept it cool. He didn't get into that whole thing because he understands. Joe Biden then starts to tell a story about how he got, as he put it, appointed to the Naval Academy, which we've known for years now is a provable lie. but he just keeps repeating it. Here.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, I was appointed by the fellow I ran against when I was 29 years old to the Naval Academy. I was one of 10.
By the way, it's not an appointment. It's a nomination.
29
Even when a
years old?
senator or a congressman writes a letter of nomination for you, that doesn't mean you're in. You don't get an appointment.
But wait, did he say when I was 29 years old?
Well, he ran against him when he was 29.
Okay.
So 10 years before.
Okay.
The senator that he ended up. By the way, and when he ran as a 29-year-old, he ran because the senator that he defeated there was too old. He was in his late 60s. And he says, it's time for new blood.
God.
And set that aside. So he claims he got appointed to the Naval Academy.
I wanted to play football. And the day I was supposed to go down for the interview, a classmate of mine who was also one of the 10 appointed to be chosen from, named Steve Dunning, came to pick me up. And I had found out 2 days earlier they had a quarterback named Roger Staubach and a halfback named Joe Bellino. I said, oh, I'm not going there. I went to Delaware. Not a joke.
It's a lie. I mean, maybe it's not a joke because it's not funny, but it is a lie. Then I bet you this is something that he's been telling for 50 years.
No, yeah. Yeah.
And it's by the way a disrespect to the honor of those men and women who go through so much to get that appointment or the nomination from their congressman and senator. Anyway, so there's that, and then he starts talking. And well, what do you want first? The Jeb Bush moment? Here, let's do the Jeb Bush moment.
Never forget, America is the strongest when we lead not only by our example of our power, but by the power of our example. You can clap for that.
Oh, dear.
This is where we are now. This is where we are. I was hoping to get a break so that my brain could recharge while everyone applauds. They told me you'd clap.
You can clap for that.
That is Jeb Bush energy.
It's a Jeb Bush
Big
moment.
time.
Yeah.
Please clap.
But, honestly, Larry, going back to him talking about the lie that he was appointed to the Naval Academy, it doesn't matter what it is or what's happening. Joe Biden will always make it about himself. This is classic pathological narcissism. This is I will never forget this, when Tom Lantos died. Tom Lantos was a representative from California. He was a Holocaust survivor who then emigrated to the United States and became a congressman, very powerful, head of the Foreign Affairs committee in the House, and he died, and Biden gave his eulogy. And I will never forget watching that on CNN. I mean, it was years and years ago, and I was just astonished, jaw-droppingly astonished, how Joe Biden managed to make Tom Lantos a giant in the U.S. House. His eulogy, or eulogizing his so-called friend, was all about Biden. How Biden had accomplishments, how Tom was essentially along for the ride. This is classic Joe Biden. Doesn't matter what the subject is, he will turn everything into a personal story about himself.
You can clap for that.
Well, a little bit more from Dementia Joe, because he was telling a story, and again, trying to inspire these young men and women who are about to join the Army as young officers, as young second lieutenants, and about the battles ahead. And he started talking about Vladimir Putin. And then, well, his brain short-circuited. We'll let you hear that, too, coming up in just a moment. First, though, at 6:15.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
WMAL. Making sense of social media. Because big tech can't be trusted. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
I was appointed by the fellow I ran against when I was 29 years old to the Naval Academy. I was one of 10. I wanted to play football.
When he's not lying, his brain is broken. That was the lie that he told. Again, completely inappropriate, by the way, to West Point to talk about how he was going to go to the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
And Roger Staubach. Let me tell you something. Everyone in America loves Roger Staubach. He's an American hero. Naval Academy grad, Super Bowl winning quarterback from the Dallas Cowboys. The only people in this nation who don't want to hear about Roger Staubach are people who go to West Point. It's just stupid. It's like going to a Boston Celtics celebration and spending your time talking about Magic Johnson. You don't do it. But then his brain froze. His brain froze in the middle of what should have been actually a relevant thing. Here's your commander-in-chief talking about strategic challenges around the world, including a man who is engaged in warfare right now with our ally, Ukraine. He starts talking about Vladimir Putin, and listen to what happens.
Putin was certain that NATO would fracture. I met with him right after being elected president right after I was sworn in, and we talked about this very issue. In the fall, he decided to, look, I shouldn't get into this probably.
Oh.
It gets me a little excited.
Oh, my God.
Now, he acts like he started to get into a topic that then I probably shouldn't tell you about that. It's written in his speech.
Yeah.
It's prepared remarks. What do you mean you probably... No, he's covering for the fact that his brain froze. He wasn't able to make sense of the words in front of him. When Joe Biden looks at a teleprompter, sometimes it suddenly looks like a bowl of alphabets, right?
Yeah, if you read
the little
anything,
cereal.
If you read anything about these sort of diseases that cause cognitive decline in people, you realize that they do have these coping mechanisms, these little tricks to get them over the. And some people, some of Alzheimer's patients, for instance, end up getting very angry and agitated. Some just just go quiet, and others again employ these tricks to help them sort of get through these socially awkward moments. And he frankly, I believe, probably does all three.
He does all of them. We've seen him get angry, lose his temper, scream at people. And you're right. This is one of those things where he starts to talk it, he loses it, and then he goes, oh, never mind.
Oh, never mind. Or he trails
never
off.
mind. We probably shouldn't get into that. Never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
And that's what that was.
like he's going to reveal, top secret information.
Yeah. Or it gets me worked up. It's like,
yeah. I don't want to get worked up here. Yeah.
Putin was certain that NATO would fracture. I met with him right after being elected president right after I was sworn in, and we talked about this very issue. In the fall, he decided to, look, I shouldn't get into this probably. It gets me a little excited.
How awkward for these people in the audience. It's supposed to be their special day. They're supposed to come away feeling energized and inspired.
Yeah.
And instead, they have to just sit there and deal with the embarrassment and be polite. Oh, the whole thing's awful.
So what's worse then about Joe Biden these days? Is it the lies that he delivered to these? By the way, you tell a lie like that when you're a cadet at the West Point Military Academy, you're expelled dishonorably. You're out. But here he goes and lies right in front of them. Then his brain breaks. Or the third option is how corrupt he is, because it was revealed over the weekend by the Oversight Committee that there were text messages that link Joe Biden to that infamous trip he took to China where he brought Hunter along with him. Remember that? This is when Hunter was in the throes of his addiction. We had already been dishonorably discharged from the Navy after only 1 month of serving in the reserves because he failed a drug test. He's been in and out of trouble, so of course he brings him with him over to China. And look at these text messages, emails, 2015, 2016. Devin Archer, former business associate of Hunter Biden, who's now serving time. Did you end up meeting with Jonathan Lee? Hunter, yes, and they got to meet Dad. All very good. Talk later. Now, you remember Joe Biden's story has always been, sure, he was with me but whatever he did in China, it had nothing to do with me. I have no idea what he did.
Right.
I think he just went to the Great Wall and got some, some bat soup in Wuhan. Who knows? I don't know. Archer, great. Have a good day over there. Then Hunter sends another email. Dinner with Xi Jinping was amazing. She and JRB, that would be Joseph Robinette Biden, were supposed to spend 2 hours together. It stretched to 7 hours. I think they're in love with each other. They almost kissed on departure. That's good to know, considering China is one of our starkest enemies. I guess that's why they haven't suffered anything from the COVID-19. Joe Biden, when he was asked about this meeting in August of 2019, said, "I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their business." Meanwhile, he was actually taking meetings with his son while conducting his son's business. So we'll talk to Joe DeGeneva about that development coming up at 7:05. Either way, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, he's got a broken brain, he tells lies, and he appears to be corrupt. Good thing there's an election this year. 6:23.
Now,
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
6:37 on this Memorial Day Monday, and we are honored to be with you live this morning. Coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGeneva will join us. 7:35, Marianne Watkins, Chief of Staff of the Honor Flight Network. 8:05 brings us presidential historian Jane Hampton Cook. And then at 8:35, we're going to talk about the World War II Memorial on the Mall, 20th anniversary. That we'll speak with the spokesperson and historian Alex Kershaw. I'm Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
We spoke about this story a little earlier, but let's bring everyone up to speed. There is a superintendent of the Denali National Park in Alaska who ordered a construction crew to remove an American flag from their crane because it was disruptive of the park experience. You know, when we think national parks and politics, we think Gabby Hoffman. She is with the IWF Center for Energy and Conservation. She's the director of that and also host of the District of Conservation podcast and an all-around great gal. Hey, Gabby, happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day, Larry and Julie.
It's one of those outrage stories that it's like, this is so avoidable. Why do we go out of our way to be idiots? And then I found out, I got to tell you, I assumed this was, because sometimes when you're in New York or even downtown D.C., when there's construction going on, these cranes, it's a giant flag, right? You know how big this flag is, Julie, in question, this thing that is disrupting the park? It's
Tiny.
3 by 5. I think it's the same size flag I fly in front of my home on my porch. Gabby, this is insane.
It is so insane. I can't believe we're even talking about this story, but it needs to be said, and here's why. Because like every other agency under the Biden administration, everything has been co-opted. They've put in people like this superintendent who have, honest to goodness, no qualifications, in my opinion, to lead the agencies. The National Park Service being one of them. This superintendent, they bragged about her being the first woman to be selected in Denali National Park's history. I don't care if she is unique, whatever, special in their view, but anytime they appoint someone to make them a historic pick, there's always something off about that. And we see that with this gesture.
Yeah, Gabby, her qualifications are a question, but it also, it reminds me of that questioning of that judge that put men in a female prison. Ted Cruz was saying, you're an activist judge. You're not a judge. You're not interested in the Constitution. You're not interested in the rule of law. You're interested in pushing an agenda. And isn't that true of particularly this superintendent, but a lot of these positions that Biden has filled with activists, not experts, not people that are qualified, but people that will push an agenda like climate change, like DEI, and like, I don't know, hatred of the American flag. Isn't that true? That is what matters more to this administration than qualifications?
You're absolutely correct, Julie, because you look at this lady's statements and past written remarks. She spoke to one of Alaska's majors paper in 2022 after being nominated and confirmed, or actually she doesn't need a confirmation because she's not National Park Service director, but after her elevation to the post because she was acting director, acting superintendent, she had said to the paper that her goal would be to see more women equitably positioned in outdoor spaces. And you know me, I'm an outdoors woman. I love women in outdoors, being in outdoors. But like, this is not the way to do it. This is so cringe. And you'll even find women on the left who work in the outdoor industry say this is beyond bizarre. And then she also said later in the interview that climate change is catastrophic.
There you go. Climate change and diversity and inclusion. That's what's necessary when you're going on a hiking trail in the Denali National Forest. So let's get back to the incident in question here. This construction crew, I'm told, based on reading accounts, was working for weeks, and the flag was there. By the way, just in case anyone's wondering, the National Park Service has American flags everywhere when you go, like flying on their flagpoles or at various, stations along the way. Anyone who's been to a national park knows that. Because you know why? It's an American national park, and it's paid for by American taxpayers. How about fly the flag? So they're working there for weeks, and it wasn't until tour buses were going by, according to the contractor, that they were told this. Has she said anything? Is there verification of this, or is it just I don't know why the contractor would claim this without it being true. Is she denying it? Is there anything official from NPS?
We haven't seen an official statement as of our speaking this morning, but I have no doubt she's going to have to be forced to give a statement. But Senator Dan Sullivan caught whiff of this from an Alaska blog that first broke this story. I think it's called the Alaska Watchman. They were the first to bring – I saw Senator Sullivan post about it. So he's a pretty serious person. I don't think he's going to take some fluff and that doesn't, have any verification and run with it. He's a pretty serious guy, likes to keep his stuff factual. So if the senator is saying something and he learned about it and has, sources of his own, I think it's a true story. And so, contractors who work for the national park are pretty patriotic, and not everyone in the National Park Service is woke, so to speak, or in agreement with the agenda. I've spoken to people who work in different government agencies, in Department of Interior, which oversees all of this. They don't all agree. Like, they just work regardless of administration. They're just there. And then they have to, unfortunately, stomach some of these crazy policies. And even the government contractors who've been working on this federal highway for a year or so, good for them to be like, we don't like the leadership whenever it changes, to certain administrations. Like, they can tell you, but that's largely what the guy said, another contractor said. And you see this with every agency, that they stray away from their mission. And like you said, with the American flag at Denali in one of the visitor centers right now, from my understanding, there's still an American flag being displayed there. And you guys know I travel to a lot of national parks, and I see it everywhere in the visitor center, people's cars, everything. It's so emblematic of the United States. Why would we have other flags? Although they do have the pride flags. I think the EPA was displaying that. They want all the agencies, including all of the park-related ones, they want them to display the pride flag, which I don't know if it's as inclusive as the American flag. The American flag should be as inclusive as everyone thinks it is. Represents all Americans.
Yeah.
So she has weird feelings about the American flag, but I bet you she would be fine with others, more political ones.
Gabby Hoffman, well, not anything from the Revolutionary War that might fly out of a Supreme Court justice's home, but yeah, you're right. We got to draw the line somewhere. Gabby Hoffman, always good to talk with you. Have a great Memorial Day. What are you doing? Are you going to go wrestle a bear or something out in the woods? What are you doing for Memorial Day?
No, I actually had my fun. I went on a Potomac cruise, then I went to a new brewery in Aldi. So I had my fill of fun because we have a horrible forecast later for today. So I got my fun in. I hope you both
Hold on. You were not causing trouble with that.
She
was. Were you on the boat with Corey Ignanamore, our producer here, who got in trouble for flying the Trump flag on the Potomac?
Yes, I was, but nobody cancel me because.
Oh, Gabby!
No.
You were running with a rough crowd there.
That's right.
Vince Colonnese's producer. We're going to talk about that a little later.
Corey wearing his fur
coat? He went viral
Oh,
there on the Potomac. So, all right, Gabby. So you were there with Storm Paglia from Town Hall as well. I understand Chris Plant made a surprise appearance on the boat too.
He did. Oh, it was so much fun.
Oh, and it was triggering leftists all up and down Georgetown and Alexandria Old Town. It's very, very good. All right, Gabby. You're quite a gal. Thank you, Gabby. Good talking with you. It is 6:45 WMAL. Of course she was on that boat.
Of course she was.
Well, it's bad, Julie Gunlock, when they have to trot out Pete Buttigieg to sort of, what's the term? I know it sounds crude, but this is a term. Polish the turd. Basically, you got to... Where things are bad, send Pete out. Because Pete does his little sort of plugged-up nose Kermit the Frog, aw shucks sort of approach. Yeah. And he's like, oh, he seems so nice. He's like everybody's gay nephew, right? And so he goes out there and he tries to be all nice, and the left loves him because he gives the conservatives hell, right? That's right, you go, Pete. Margaret Brennan, who is no friend of MAGA, it's not like she's patrolling the streets at 2 a.m. in Chicago looking for somebody to beat up. She's asking Pete Buttigieg about the debacle of $7.5 billion to to build a network of chargers for electric vehicles that have so far amounted to 8, a total of 8 in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. The Federal Highway Administration says only 7 or 8 charging stations have been produced with a $7.5 billion investment that taxpayers made back in 2021. Why isn't that happening more quickly?
So the president's goal is to have 500,000 chargers up by the end of this decade. Now, in order to do a charger, it's more than just plunking a small device into the ground. There's utility work, and this is also really a new category of federal investment. But we've been working with each of the 50 states. Every one of them is getting formula dollars to do this work, engaging them in the first handful. Again, by 2030, 500,000 chargers. And the very first handful of chargers are now already being physically built.
A handful.
Now,
yeah.
what you can't see there is Margaret Brennan actually starts laughing.
You could sort of hear her scoff.
You can scoff, but she actually does look at him and smile and laugh at the idea that an investment of nearly $8 billion has resulted in so few of these. And I love that. Did you notice also he's kind of condescends to her? Yeah. He says, Margaret,
let me
it involves more than
mansplain to you.
Plunking down. We know, Pete. We get it. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's not fooling anyone because we actually have a track record of this sort of thing. There already is a network of electric chargers for electric vehicles in this country. It was constructed by the private sector. The Tesla Corporation already, they realized that no one was going to buy an electric car unless they had a way of charging it around the country, beyond just at their home. And so Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, actually put together that vision. It cost him a little over $1 billion, not $7.5 to $8 billion, just over $1 billion. And the network is there. You can drive from D.C. to Los Angeles without ever running out of electricity. There are power stations all the way along the way. It's owned. It's a private sector thing. He worked with the local. It's not like he just plunked them into the ground, Pete. He worked with local municipalities. He worked with states. He worked with the power companies. He got what he needed. And there's some areas that have more. Some it's all based on supply and demand. Are there as many in rural areas? No. You know why? Because they drive F-150s out there.
Yeah.
They don't drive Teslas. And it got worse, actually. Listen to I don't know what's gotten into Margaret Brennan's Wheaties, but
Donald Trump repeatedly talks about President Biden's decision to force the industry towards making 56% of car batteries electric by 2032, 13% hybrid. Listen to what he said in New Jersey recently.
Do you notice he's trying to save the electrical vehicle, but not the gas-powered, which is the vehicle that everybody wants. They're going crazy with the electric car, costing us a fortune. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars subsidizing a car that nobody wants and nobody's ever going to buy.
He's not wrong.
Oh, he's
on
wrong.
The purchasing. He's not. Of the 4 million vehicles purchased, 269,000 electric vehicles were sold in the U.S. market. It's up like 2%.
Every single year, more Americans buy EVs than the year. Well, this is really important.
More quickly.
Every single year, more Americans buy EVs than the year prior.
yeah, but for how many hundreds of millions of dollars? And Ford has already stopped production of their F-150 pickup, electric-powered pickup that they were touting a year ago as like the great new dawn of electric vehicles. But did you hear Margaret Brennan there? It's like, oh, he's not wrong. No, he's wrong. No, he's not.
No, he's not.
I mean, you very rarely see a network host pushing back on a Democrat.
And this is one of these moments, though, Larry, where we're praising Margaret Brennan for doing the absolute minimum of like what a journalist should do. But you're right that it doesn't happen very often. So we're like, good job, Margaret, for being a reporter.
I'm not
10
praising,
seconds.
but I am pointing out.
He's not wrong.
Oh, he's
on
wrong.
The purchasing. He's not.
He's not. It's 6:53.